Beacon of despair. The lighthouse stood tall against the backdrop of the stormy night, its beacon cutting through the darkness like a knife as I approached its weather-beaten exterior. A sense of foreboding washed over me, the howling wind carrying with it whispers of the horrors that lay hidden within its walls. I had been drawn to the lighthouse by rumors of its haunted past steeped in tragedy and despair. But despite the warnings of locals and the chill that crept down my spine, I could not resist the allure of the unknown. Ignoring the nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach, I stepped inside, my footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. The interior of the lighthouse was cold and musty, the air thick with the scent of salt and decay. The walls were adorned with faded photographs and maritime artifacts, relics of a bygone era that seemed to whisper tales of the sea's unforgiving embrace. As I ascended the spiral staircase, the sound of crushing waves grew louder, the storm raging outside with a ferocity that seemed to shake the very foundation of the lighthouse. But still, I pressed on, driven by a morbid curiosity to uncover the secrets that lay hidden within its haunted halls. With each step, the darkness seemed to close in around me, suffocating me with its oppressive weight. Strange shadows danced on the walls, their forms shifting and twisting with each flicker of the dying light. And then, just as I reached the top of the staircase, I saw the ghostly figure of a woman standing at the edge of the lantern room, her tattered dress billowing in the wind. She was a vision of ethereal beauty, her eyes hollow and empty as she stared out into the stormy night. And yet, beneath her ghostly exterior, I could sense a darkness that threatened to consume me whole if I dared to venture any closer. With a sense of dread gnawing at the edges of my sanity, I approached the woman, my heart pounding in my chest as I braced myself for what was to come. But before I could speak, she turned to face me, her gaze piercing through the darkness with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. In that moment, I realized the truth. The lighthouse was not haunted by the spirits of the dead, but by something far more sinister. The woman before me was a creature of darkness, a spectre of the sea that feasted on the souls of the lost and the damned. With a primal roar, she lunged at me, her fingers curled into claws as she reached for my throat. I stumbled backwards, my mind reeling as I fought to escape the lighthouse's deadly grasp. But the creature was relentless, its grip unyielding. It dragged me closer and closer to the edge of the lantern room. As I teetered on the brink of oblivion, I knew that I had but one chance for survival. Summoning all of my courage, I reached out and grasped the lantern's lever, pulling it with all the strength I could muster. With a deafening groan, the lantern erupted into life, its blinding light piercing through the darkness and banishing the creature back to the depths from whence it came. As the storm raged on outside, I collapsed to the floor, the echoes of the lighthouse horror story still ringing in my ears. And as I lay there, battered and broken, I couldn't help but wonder what other terrors lay waiting in the darkness, just beyond the reach of the light. Lighthouse scars. The lighthouse stood tall and imposing against the backdrop of the stormy sea, its weathered walls bearing the scars of countless years, battling against the relentless fury of the ocean. To many, it was a symbol of safety and hope, a beacon of light guiding ships to safety through treacherous waters. But to me, it would forever be a harbinger of dread, a looming shadow that haunted my dreams and whispered of unspeakable horrors. It was a bitterly cold night when I first arrived at the lighthouse, a lone keeper tasked with maintaining the beacon's steady glow in the face of the raging storm. As I stepped inside the dimly lit interior, a sense of unease settled over me like a suffocating blanket, the walls seeming to close in around me with each passing moment. The howling wind outside seemed to echo through the empty corridors, its mournful cry a constant reminder of the isolation that awaited me in this desolate outpost. Yet, despite the ominous atmosphere, I pressed on, determined to fulfill my duties and prove myself worthy of this solitary existence. As the night wore on, the storm raged outside with increasing intensity, the waves crashing against the rocks below with a deafening roar. I tended to the beacon with care, ensuring that its light remained steady and unwavering in the face of the tempest. But as the hours passed and the darkness deepened, I began to notice something strange, a faint whispering that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the lighthouse. At first, I dismissed it as nothing more than a trick of the wind. But as the whispers grew louder and more insistent, I knew that something was dreadfully wrong. I tried to ignore the whispers, to focus on my duties and block out the growing sense of unease that gnawed at my senses. But as the night wore on and the storm raged outside, the whispers grew louder, their words incomprehensible yet filled with a sense of urgency that sent chills down my spine. With each passing moment, the whispers seemed to take on a life of their own, their voices mingling with the sound of the wind and the crashing waves to form an eerie symphony of terror. I could feel their presence closing in around me, their icy fingers brushing against my skin, a lover's caress. And then, just as suddenly as they had begun, the whispers ceased, leaving behind an ominous silence that seemed to stretch on for eternity. I stood frozen in place, my heart pounding in my chest as I waited for some sign of what was to come. And then, with a deafening crash, the door to the lighthouse burst open, revealing a figure cloaked in darkness standing in the doorway. Its eyes gleamed with an otherworldly intensity, and a sense of dread washed over me as I realized that this was no ordinary visitor. It was a harbinger of death, come to claim my soul for its own. With a cry of terror, I turned and fled into the depths of the lighthouse, the sound of my footsteps echoing through the empty corridors, as I raced to escape the looming spectre that pursued me. But no matter how fast I ran, the darkness seemed to follow, its icy grip tightening around my throat with each passing moment. As I reached the top of the lighthouse, I turned to confront my pursuer, only to find myself face to face with a reflection of my own terror, a twisted, malevolent entity that wore my own features like a mask. With a scream of horror, I realized the truth. I had become the very thing that haunted my nightmares, a prisoner of the lighthouse's cursed walls for all eternity.